Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Event Icons. I'm Brant Kruger. Today, we're going to be talking with Sheila Cummins about all kinds of best practices for your business. So we're going to do a little bit of a spin and do a deep dive on our best practices for business. That's coming up right now.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of #Event Icons. To catch all the bonus content, resources mentioned, and an invite to our Facebook and LinkedIn groups, head to www.event-icons.com. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway. Just tag your post with #Event Icons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on #Event Icons.
All right, let's get into it. Once again, our guest today is Sheila Cummins, and we're going to be talking to her about business best practices. If you haven't heard of Sheila, she is amazing. She is running a coaching and training company that supports women entrepreneurs to launch, grow, and scale their businesses. So it's a perfect opportunity to kind of go into the nuts and bolts behind the scenes, right? We get so caught up in in the lights and the sound and the tablecloths and all of the day-to-day stuff of event planning. So we thought it would be good to talk about where, a lot of planners out there are independent business operators. They're independent entrepreneurs. And it's some people have said it's one of the benefits of our industry. Some people have said it's one of the detractors of our industry, that anybody can go out there and hang out a shingle and call themselves an event planner. So Sheila, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. This is an absolute honor.
Fantastic. All right. It's an honor to have you here. We've got all kinds. Let's start off with the softballs. We've got the questions that we ask everybody. So usually we say what got us into the events industry, but since you're not necessarily specific to the events industry, tell us maybe a little bit about how you got to where you are, and if maybe those events hadn't transpired, what you would be doing differently.
Right. Well, I always call myself a recovering teacher. I was a classroom teacher for about 15 years. And when I had my kids, I knew it was time to exit. I had lost the passion for teaching other kids. And I don't believe that a teacher without passion has any place in the classroom. So I made it my mission to figure out what else I could do. And while I was home with the kids while they were little, I test drove a couple different businesses. I started a tutoring company. I ran a parenting blog online. And then I ended up working, developing courses for a friend of ours who runs a national training company here in Canada. And I started developing courses for him. And it was amazing because I got to read everything out there, so I could develop courses on communication and sales and marketing. And at the same time, I was trying it in my own businesses because I still had to make an income, but I didn't want to work full-time as a teacher. And so through a long journey and swivels, as it always goes, I ended up hosting a women's conference of women entrepreneurs. And in between introducing the speakers, I would do a training related to what it was that the next speaker would do. And at the end of the day, someone came up and said, "Sheila, I'd like to hire you." And I thought, how awesome is that? For what? And they said, "Well, I'd really like you to coach me." And I said, "Well,
that is an important question."
Right. What do you want from me? I can't sew. I'm not very good at drawing. And they said, "I want you to coach me and help me increase my sales." And so I brought her into my practice, and I say practice because I'd never done it before. And we found our way. And then her friend hired me, and then her friend hired me, and so on and so on. And I found that I could train and get women to a certain level in their business just through education and through training, but I couldn't get them past that barrier. And that's when I went back and got certified as a coach. I now have probably 4 coaching certifications, and I keep taking more as the need arises. And that's how this whole thing kind of started. I said yes to an opportunity.
Well, these things are ever evolving, right? I mean, I think anybody would be wise to keep moving and keep rolling and keep trying. And that is, of course, one of the reasons why we like to have people like you on, is so that we can constantly keep learning these things. I love it. I mean, it's one of the reasons I do this show, is because I get to have these types of conversations. So what if that conversation never happened? What if that didn't transpire? What if she didn't come and say, "I'd like to hire you"? Do you think, what path do you think that would have sent you on instead?
I have to wonder if I'd be working in a similar sphere. I've always been an educator, and everything I do starts with education as the first level of defense. So I would be educating in some way, shape, or form. I don't think I'd still be in the classroom, but one of my gifts is taking content and a piece of knowledge and making it applicable to a wide audience. And so I would be doing something in the education field. This just happens to be my genius in that business to me just makes sense. It's very procedural. And I think about the world through a series of flowcharts and graphs, and I see, that if this, then that, that's how I view the world. And so it's a very logical move for me. And I've been able to bring in my last decade of experience, and I don't train on anything that I haven't implemented. Usually what I'm teaching is something that I have learned along the way or I have needed to overcome, because I am ahead of the women that I support, and some were pacing, some were at the same level, and then I can rely on the coaching to help them get through whatever barrier is standing in their way.
Nice. Well, we're being joined by regular.
Sorry, I'm like
Lindsey Martin-Milbury. That's all right.
Speaking of small business problems,
welcome
the
to
technology gods have not been smiling on Lindsey today, and we always do our best. And for anybody who does podcasting, especially live podcasting, it's always an interesting scramble. And even getting getting together ahead of time sometimes doesn't do it. But Lindsey, thank you for joining me. I'm glad you're here.
Yes, no, and thank you for sharing all of those thoughts, Sheila. It's been fascinating to do the research on you, because your journey has been it looks like a straight line, but hearing you talk about it, there are all these different pieces. And, as a woman entrepreneur myself, it's funny because event planners, we do it because we love the attendees, and we always feel like we're going to be inside a space where the client, the corporation we work for, the association, it's always going to be there and be the right fit, right? But the same things that you talk about on your website about needing something slightly different and having these other shifts come in, a lot of us hit that point. It's one of the reasons why I went out on my own as an independent planner and kind of got into it. So, with that, what is probably the single most important thing that you learned when you first went out on your own or started the coaching business and talking with people who were starting up these new businesses?
Yeah, great question. So I would say that if I had to take one lesson and just boil it down into one idea, it's that we are our business, and the only people who can really, really talk about our business is us. And, we can go to school for 4 years and get a degree in marketing, or we can learn along the way. And when we hide and we don't put ourselves out there and we don't make ourselves visible, people can't find us. But the reality is, even as an event planner, you are in the people business and you're in the helping business. And so when you're connected to that desire to help others, you've got to make yourself visible and be seen. And you can create the best content in the world, but there's no point creating it if you don't get, I call it eyeballs. You need eyeballs. We've got to be looking at how many eyeballs are seeing what it is that you're doing. How many are coming to your website to read what it is that you're doing? How many are listening to your podcast? How many are connecting with you on social media? How many conversations are we having from outside of our computer? And so if there's one thing above and beyond all else, actually, no, there's two, but the number one thing would be to get visible and be seen. The second thing is that you're running a business and money's involved. And I think there's too many people that are running a business and are not paying attention to their numbers, and they're running at a loss, which at some times is okay. But if that's an ongoing thing, we're digging ourselves a hole, and it's easy to get in the hole. What's not as easy is getting out of the hole. So for every dollar that you're going into debt, it's going to take you $3 to get out. And so we've got to know our numbers going in and be absolutely taking a risk, but not at the risk of your financial security. I feel strongly about that.
No, I mean, Winfrey wants something. She's the best business advice any gave me was sign your own checks and balance your own checkbooks. And I was like, that's brilliant to hear someone who is worth billions of dollars and she still signs her own checks and balances. Because I mean, cash flow can make or break you. And yeah, I got goosebumps. You goosebump me.
Oh, like goosebumps.
Brant looks very serious down there. What are you doing down there, Brant?
I was trying to send you a message that you're still breaking up a little bit in the internet's
I
world.
give up, guys.
Yeah, I'm very sorry.
I have that effect on technology. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think I have this magnetic field when it comes to software. Anytime I go around, everything seems to crash. So I'm going to hold myself responsible for that, Lindsay.
No, I'm just going to say Brant then needs to take the interview and go.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was like, the last one, I was just like, I think I got most of what you were saying there. You know, folks, that's just the way that it happens sometimes, and we're going to keep rolling with it.
King. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I was trying to pay attention there and just split my consciousness, but I got some great tips about, you know, really knowing the numbers before you go in. It's definitely not something that I did when I went out on my own. It was a little bit of a unique situation for me personally. It was like I literally had to decide over a weekend, like if I'm gonna, you know, quit my job and go out on my own and all that stuff. But most people don't have that, and this is something that's come up on this show multiple times. This idea of, you know, not necessarily moving on until you've got all your ducks in a row, instead of just going out and launching it. Yeah, you're taking a chance, but doing it. And like you said, you know, keeping all of those things very separate, very strict, and knowing who's writing the check and all that kind of stuff, because I've also seen that go horribly wrong.
You know, building on that though, Brant, I think it's important that we understand that there is a risk. There's always going to be a risk when we get out on our own, but I think we can also make a calculated risk. So when you're working for someone and have the gift of a regular paycheck and you don't have to go find your rent or your mortgage payment the next month, there is a place to also be building up what you're doing on the side so that you have what I call social proof, or proof of concept that what you're selling is going to sell. I think it's, you know, there's two ways to take the risk. One is to have the leap of faith. And for some people, that's the way to do it. And for other people, we need to make a leap of calculated faith. We need to have some things in order so that when we do go out on our own, we already have a base and a foundation of which to build on.
Exactly. And those are things that you can do. Those are things that you can do as you're kind of starting to make that leap. You know, we've got some things kind of set aside as we were talking about leading into this episode about things that we could discuss with you. You know, one of which you kind of already answered, which is, are you running a company versus are you working for yourself? I mean, it's kind of a little bit of both at the beginning, but keeping that mindset separately clearly is an important part.
It is. And because what you're building, and we've got to look at it through the long-term play, is with each new client, with each new event that you're planning, we want to be looking at the systems and the processes that go into running that event. And as we build those, you are setting yourself up to be able to run the company so that other people can come in and support you. And I think it's important that as the event planner, you know exactly what your genius is. We all are killer at different things. And even within the event space, different event planners are genius at different parts of the event. And so when you know what your genius is and you systematize that, which is maybe just a zone of competence or something that you know has to happen, the next time we can put into our quote for the event some space to hire someone to come and start taking that piece off of your plate. And that comes back to knowing your numbers when you're putting in a proposal. We have to know the cost of running this business. We've got to know your cost of goods that are sold. We have to know the cost that you're incurred. And part of that cost is your salary. And the other cost is salary of your team.
Yep, absolutely. And unfortunately, we've given up on trying to keep Lindsey connected. I thank you so much for trying to dial in, Lindsey. We really appreciate it. Sometimes, like we said, the internet gods just aren't smiling down on us. So she said she's going to drop into the chat though, and so she's going to, because I know she was really looking forward to this conversation, and so we're both a little bummed that she wasn't able to do it. You know, what are some of the barriers to getting that kind of initial growth? I know one of the things that I really struggled with early on is is pricing, knowing
Yep.
what you're worth. And everybody that I would talk to that was, in the business and have been doing it for a while, they're like, oh, you always charge you never charge enough when you're first starting, and you got to charge enough. You got to respect yourself. But at the same time, dude, I got to get money coming in, so it's a
Yeah.
really hard balance to know that everyone who's been there ahead of you says you need to charge more. But at the
Yes.
same time, you're competing against everyone who's been ahead of you.
Sure. But what's interesting is, people often come and they say, Sheila, I don't know how to price myself. I need to tell me the number. And it's actually less about the number. And this is the piece that frustrates people so much, is the barrier is actually the mindset behind the number. A number is just a number. Your price is simply a series of ones and zeros. It's binary. There's nothing to it. This is the cost if you want this problem solved. But what we have attached to that number is all of the stories that we have related to money, which, if we want to bypass the coaching and go right down to the heart of it, it's always based in self-worth. Am I worth that amount? And so we've got to be focusing on that mindset piece and be 100% confident in what it is that we're offering is the right solution for your client. And when you say the number, it's just a number, and you say it and then you stop talking.
Yeah.
It's just a number.
That is a fantastic point, because I definitely have a tendency to, oh, here's the number, and I know it's like, and I know, and just keep blah 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 blah. Yep, and the mouth's just running.
It's too much.
It's like you're talking yourself out of the number that you just put on the table. So that's an incredible point. Lindsey chimed in that organic raspberries are like $7 a pound. So if they can swing like that, maybe we can too.
And yet people still buy them. And one of the things that's so important is that as an event planner, you're positioned powerfully. And what that means is it's really clear on your genius and what makes you different. Who it is that you help is a very specific group of either companies or individuals, and you're going to help them in a certain way. And when you can position yourself and be able to clearly articulate, this is who I am, this is who I serve, this is the impact of my work and the results that are going to come from the events that I plan, and this is why you need to choose me, that is kind of your golden ticket to getting who it is that you need. That positioning is so critical.
I think I've mentioned him now 2 weeks in a row, but my friend Adrian Seeger gave me some of the best advice that I had on pricing, which was price it so you're happy either way. So if right now the priority is I need to get dollars in the door and I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit, then you'll be happy getting that money, then you're happy. Or if it's a job that you don't necessarily really want, price it extra stupid high. And if you get it, you're happy. Or it's going to be a long, run on the road. It's going to be 5 days on the road or something like that, away from your family and away from your kids. Price it so you're happy either way. It's something that has always stuck with me.
That's I love that. I think that's so important. And I think it's also important to be looking at it through that objective lens. Everything that you've just talked about has a price tag attached. If you're away from your family, you have childcare costs, you have your hotel and accommodation costs. If you're brand new, you're going to have startup cost. Everything has a cost. And so when you take the time to price it properly, and look at what your salary is, what do you want to take home at the end of the day, to your point, so that you feel really good about the work that you've done, then you've kind of hit the golden ticket.
And another way to look at it is that you're paying for experience. So I'm giving up income that I'm then paying out, in essence, for education, on the job training experience that you can't, especially in the events industry. It's so much about feel and, knowing the stuff comes from being on job and being on site. It's really difficult, even though there are programs in it, to learn a lot of this stuff in college.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
So you talk a little bit about positioning. What is that, and why is it important?
Sure. So the positioning is just how it is that you talk about yourself. And so if we think about it, another word you could use is branding. And branding, we always think is, what's your color scheme? What font am I going to use? But it's actually more than that, because your position or your brand is how people describe you. And we want to be really clear on how we want to be described. So if you are an event planner who focuses solely on events that raise money for not-for-profits, then we want people saying, oh, that's Jen and Ashley. They run events that are specially for companies just like yours. You know, I'm thinking of another event planner that I work with called Natalie, the Sustainable Event Planner. If your company is interested in sustainable events, you want them to be thinking, oh, who's that girl that I met who's the sustainable event plan? Let me go look it up. Oh yeah, that's Natalie. I need to reach out to her. So positioning is everything that you're putting out so that people completely understand who you are, what you do, who you serve, how you help, and why they should choose you. You are in the results business when you're an event planner. And we want to know exactly what results your clients want from you. And that's what we need out there in the market. And that's that link to the visibility and the marketing. You know, we can't assume that people are just going to find us. We have to do some footwork so that we can be seen. So asking for referrals as an event planner is critical. Making great relationships. You know, there's the certain thing about referrals is really they come when you do great work. People will talk. But we need people to talk to other people who serve the people that you do. And so if they don't fully understand what you're all about and what your jam is, then it's hard for them to refer you. You know, we also have the privilege of having social media at our fingertips. You know, I'm going to age myself a little bit, but having been there when Facebook was started and Twitter and LinkedIn, and having watched the internet evolve, you know, I hate to say this, but I remember a time when there was no internet, and I remember talking to my parents and saying, you know, there's this thing, you get a modem, you got to take your computer down to this place, they'll put it in. So I am dating myself a bit, but it's so much easier because there's so much at our fingertips that we can be leveraging. And if we're not putting ourselves out there in a place of, I have impact, I want to make impact on the world, I have something that I can teach, I want to share about a great event. If we're not putting that out there, people aren't going to find us.
But did you have a MySpace page? That's what we really need to know.
Shh.
Yeah, that's a yes. But we won't hold it against. No, you're absolutely right. And the funny thing to me is that, you know, the explosion of social media. You know, it's like, oh, it's this amazing social media thing. Where did this come from? The internet has always been social. I mean, at its core, it's people communicating to each other. You know, originally it was, you know, email, and then, you know, you had to go down into a basement of a library somewhere to get an email address, but it was still social. It was still people connecting to each other. And then long before any of these, you know, current versions of, you know, multiplayer games, you know, people were finding ways to hack together, ways to talk on headsets while they were playing online games. And, you know, it's always been a social place. So it's always kind of interesting to me when people talk about, you know, this new thing called social media. It's you know, once this new thing, then it'll be another thing that'll be even more social.
But I think we forget that it is social. And one of the biggest mistakes I see some of my women making, or women that are running their own businesses, they're using it as a one-way communication platform. And they're just throwing stuff out. Oh, it's Instagram. I got to put a quote out because it's Monday, or I have to ask a question because it's Wednesday. And they're forgetting that social media is to have conversations. And the best conversations happen when you respond to other people's posts and engage them and add value to them. And, you know, as an event planner, being part of a group for that collection of people who you serve, being parts of those groups and being a part of the conversation is probably your most valuable marketing tool, as opposed to sitting there scrolling through Facebook and Instagram on our phones and just hitting like here and there. You know, or oh, it's Friday, I've got to have, you know, or Thursday, I have to have a throwback Thursday post. That's not really what social media is all about. It's using it as a tool to make the world better, really. You have a platform, it's a gift, it's an honor, and we want to use the platform for good.
It's a fantastic point, and I resisted using any kind of automation when it comes to social media for a really long time, and the compromise that I kind of had with myself is that I am spooling out links of articles that I think people would be interested in, that they're related to, and so that tends to happen for me in batches. Like I'll have a time to kind of sit down and so I use Buffer so I can kind of throw it all out there, and then it will slowly spit them out at a more regular interval, more just because the time that I have to, otherwise people would see like 40 posts from me and then none for like 3 weeks as I got busy.
Think that's just smart. I call that a power move. And a power move is any small action that you take to get you closer to your goal. So that to me is just a smart use of time. Batch creating content is brilliant. Where we want you also to be is watching that content. And I think the mistake that we make, and I actually think one of the demises of Twitter, is people automated Twitter and then they forgot to kind of engage when something happens. So they put it out on Buffer later, Hootsuite, whatever the tool is, and then they never look at it. So they're missing people responding to them. They're missing to people DMing them. And there's just so much coming at you that it's really hard to consume. And so you got to choose your platform based on where your people are and then show up. So absolutely batch create, absolutely batch plan it to go out, but then be monitoring and be noticing and engaging and commenting. They're two different pieces to the marketing puzzle.
And it's it's absolutely true, and it works on an almost subconscious level. Like I've been getting more and more involved in LinkedIn lately, and I'm noticing the people that are doing that, the people that are clearly like, hey, what do you think? And then tag me, and it's like, oh, okay. And so they're staying top of mind in my head. And so even though I've only seen, the person that I'm thinking of, I've only seen her in person like once in the last year and a half, I'm thinking about her on a regular basis because she's engaging, she's tagging people in posts, and it's not just me. You can tell she rotates it around, so she's clearly got the magic fairy dust when it comes to engaging social media.
But, I think we also often rely only on social media, and we forget about one of the most important tools that we have, that is our email list. And when you're reliant solely on social media as your lead generator, you are 100% at the mercy of a third-party app. And all they have to do is change their algorithm and you lose everything. And there is a place to have Facebook and Instagram, but as long as that's your only source of, or only way of your only way of communicating with your people, you are relying on that third-party app. And that's where that newsletter list is so powerful, because you get to control the conversation. And these are people who have said, yes, I want to hear more from you. I want to learn more from you. I want to stay in your sphere. And so, I see people build these email lists and then they never talk to them. Then, you get the apology. I'm sorry, I haven't been in your inbox for 3 months. It's been really busy. But you have my email because I'm interested in learning from you. So how about talking to me and connecting with me regularly? I can choose whether I open your email or not. A lot of people, I hear a lot of women in particular are like, well, I don't want to be too salesy. I don't want to be too pushy. I don't want to, but the thing about the inbox is, to your point about being seen, they don't have to read your email, but they've seen your name. And if they've seen your name and they choose to delete, that's okay. They've still seen your name. So you've come up to the executive functioning part of their brain, and you've kind of come back on their radar. So we can't worry about being too salesy. If you're only ever pushing and selling through an email, I think that probably you'll get a lot of unsubscribes. But the goal of an email is just to create what we call a micro conversion. And a micro conversion is having your client take some kind of action. Read a blog, listen to a podcast, join you on Instagram, share something, hit reply, buy something. Like, those are all things that we want to have happen out of the newsletter. So if we can show up as who we are, have it be in our voice, be it fun, be it engaging, have that micro conversion intention behind it, then we can really start getting some legs on our email list, and it gives us another marketing platform that is 100% in our control.
There's a couple different directions that I could go out of that. The first one, though, is on the email side. I agree 100% that that's a vastly untapped universe at some point. The only thing that I struggle with is I see so many people that are under 25-ish that just don't use email.
Right.
You know, even just trying to communicate with them on a program or something like that. If I accidentally use email, which is my primary mode of communication, they
Yeah.
just don't see it unless I'm hitting them on
Right.
Slack or something like that.
Right.
So if that's your target market, let's say,
Yeah.
you know, is that still an effective means of doing it?
Sure. Great question. It is still important to have their contact information. A lot of email platforms now will allow you to send an SMS as well to your people. But this is one of those questions where we have to know your market. If your market does not use email, we still need that contact information because we need to be able to be in charge of the conversation. But you want your micro conversions to come through the platform where your people are. So if it is Slack, then being in Slack. If it is sending a DM or having a bot that automatically pushes somebody through the messenger funnel, it doesn't really matter. What matters is you're using what your people use. And so as an event planner, if you're selling to other 20 to 25, 29-year-olds, then yeah, you're going to want to try something different. If your client, the one who signs your check at the end of the day, still uses email, we need to be doing that as well.
The other thing that you touched on in there is this idea of kind of the overly aggressive selling, you know,
Yeah.
and this, there's actually been a lot of discussion on LinkedIn. Lindsey brought it up in the chat as well. You know, those people that kind of do the drive-by on LinkedIn where, you know, they just immediately launch into, you know, great, let's connect. And then here's like clearly a cut and paste, you know, read my book, check out my thing,
Yeah.
da 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 da, link here, you know, that goes there. No, no hi, no hello, no, you
Yeah.
know, buy you a drink and dinner. I mean, just going right
Right.
for it. And so how do you try and find the balance of, you know, being that more, you know, having that more casual communication, while still eventually trying to make the sale?
Sure. So you're in the people business. And so we need to treat your LinkedIn connections as people. And I would hope that you want to work with people who you knew. And so if we swapped the vision of it and we're not about throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks, and we're not about having numbers and having as many contacts as possible, we're focused on having the quality contacts with whom we are building a personal relationship. That is where the power of LinkedIn is. And taking the time to get to know that person. And, often the first point of contact will be exploratory, learning more about them and where they're going. And all we're doing in that is learning and trying to figure out, can we actually help that person? Can we be of service to them? And, you can go through the automated and you can get as many contacts as you want. It doesn't mean that they are your contacts or the right contacts. And I'm a firm believer in quality over quantity. We're in the people business, my friends. Like at the end of the day, everybody who says yes to you will be through a relationship of some sort.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, change direction a little bit. We've touched on a few of them throughout. What do you feel about kind of the most common mistakes when it comes to folks that maybe want to start up an event planning business from scratch?
Yeah, so not taking the time to really understand where you can shine and the impact that you can have, for sure. Uh, Saying yes to absolutely everything because you're desperate. If you are that desperate for cash, then we've got to find you a way to ease that financial pressure so you can say yes to the right people. I think a kiss of death is to say yes to the wrong client and not get them the results that they want, versus saying no to that person who's the wrong fit and yes to the right client. We can't always be super picky and super particular, but we also want to know who we can get the best results for. And that's where we want to be playing. And, I think the biggest mistake, and I hate to say it, and you're going to, the listeners are going to be frustrated, but it all comes back to here. And when we go from that scarcity mindset of, I have to take every job that comes my way and I'm going to, price low because I've got to get the money in the door, that's not sustainable for a long period of time. And we've got to come at it from that place of trust. We've got to come at it from that place of confidence and clarity that we know exactly who we can help and how we get the best results.
So that's a fantastic recap, and I'm really glad we took the time to kind of go through those. once we've gotten going, though, is, kind of another, another step, right? And this is absolutely true for me, where, like every 5 years, I just kind of hit this like, okay, I need to learn something new. I need to do something new. At my old, I worked for a production company for 18 years before I went out on my own. And that was me. Like every 5 years, I needed to shift position. I needed to move into a different role. I would learn something completely new and completely different. And they would kind of hold me up. It's like, hey, see, you can do new things. But since I've been out on my own, I've also started to feel that same kind of like, okay, it's been about 5 years, kind of doing the same thing. How do we start to then, we found our niche. That's great. We found our passion. We found our thing. But after a while, that can start to feel like a rut. So how do we either continue to embrace that niche, or how do we start to break out of that rut?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. The rut is caused by something. And so we've got to understand exactly what it is that's causing that. Is it that you're bored? If you're bored, then we've got to put a new challenge in there. And what is that challenge that would jazz you up? What is that next step? What does it look like? And we don't have to know how to do it, but I think it's important to take the time to say, okay, I'm kind of bored. I've been doing the same thing for 5 years. What am I really looking for? What would totally jazz me up right now? And there's nothing wrong with pivoting what you're doing. Maybe you're going to pivot to a new niche. Maybe you're going to up level to a new type of event. Maybe you're going to add on a staff member to liberate you from those jobs that are making you want to gouge your eyeballs out. There's lots of different ways that you can be pivoting. And the beauty of running your business is small pivots often have big results attached to them. We don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We just want to try something new. And, if you're wanting to swap, I talked to somebody the other week, she wanted to go from, niche A to niche B. And so we talked about it and we said, well, how did you get so well established in niche A? She said, well, it was all through my personal connections. I started networking. I started talking to people. I, followed up with people. And I was, so let's do the exact same thing. We know what works. Let's just translate it to this new niche. But she had to first identify what it was that she was looking for. So I hear you on the being in a rut, and you do want to be up leveling constantly. I truly believe that knowledge is power. The more you know, the more you can do. But knowledge is just between your ears until you take action on it. And so sometimes we've got to challenge ourselves to take a risk. If you're someone who's only ever done local events, try something outside of your local space. If you're someone who's only worked in a small niche, try something in that bigger niche. Just try it. There's no harm in trying, but you've got to know what it is that's causing the rut. And you need to know what it is that you're wanting to challenge.
And probably don't forget that it might not just be your business life, that, it could be something beyond business out in your personal world that, part of, part of my own thought processes of trying to figure out, okay, am I feeling stuck in a rut for real or anything like that, is I suddenly realized that I hadn't been in a band for over 5 years, and music's been a big part of my life and for, decades, literally. And just, it suddenly occurred to me like, man, I haven't been in a band for a long time. And so maybe that I'm just starting to get itchy because I haven't had any kind of creative outlet. And so, don't forget that side of your life as well. I guess I would just throw in that, as you start to get that 5-year itch, start to look at the rest of your life as well and realize that maybe there's an opportunity to stay focused, stay in your lane when it comes to your business that you're always getting better at, and then find another way to get that creativity, to get that, expression going.
I love that. One of the things that I had been in a rut was running, I love to do webinars and live masterclasses. Teaching is my passion. Any opportunity I had to stand up and teach, I'm going to say yes to. But at about, I guess almost a year ago, I was sort of at that, I'm going to run another masterclass kind of place. And so I knew that I had to find a new way to connect and engage with my audience. And so I did a lot of research. I did a lot of learning, put myself through a coaching program. And I ended up, instead of doing it through the computer, I ran a live event. And I didn't go out there thinking, I'm going to get 500 people in the room. Like, it's not realistic. My goal was 50. I want to get 50 women in a room, and I just want to love on them and teach them for 2 days. And so I did. And it was a huge risk. Oh my gosh, I don't have to tell any of you the financial risk of hosting an event. But it was two of the most fabulous days in my last decade. I loved every minute of it. And so I'm going to do another one. But there will become a time where the 2 days is like, got to do another 2-day event. I need to shake it up. So that's me just getting connected with what's not working anymore and making a decision of what's another way that I can achieve that same result. So that would be another example of that.
It's a long haul. So yeah, but I can imagine where that would go from amazing to but then you just find a new thing. You just find a new thing. I kind of love it because I feel like we're kind of going through the stages, right? Of the kernel of the idea, and I haven't left my other job yet, through the early stages and figuring out the money, through the 5-year kind of the next stage beyond that is now we've gotten to the point where we need to start taking on more people. So, especially in a business like event planning, it's so rapidly you need to start relying on other people. How do you recommend like still relatively young businesses start to deal with things like staffing?
Right. Great question. We live in a gig economy right now. Our workforce is changing. People are looking for flexible hours. They're not wanting to work 9 to 5, have full-time jobs. They want to have multiple streams of income. And when we're clear on the help that we need, we also know hopefully what our budget is and what we can afford. And the trick is we usually have to hire before we're ready. So there is a little bit of a leap there. And it's not like, well, I'm going to wait until I have this amount in my bank account and then I'm going to hire, because usually that hire is what's going to make that amount in your bank account. And so when you can get clear on what it is that you need, and more importantly, who the person is that you want to bring onto your team, and we onboard them properly and we give them the tools to succeed and we lead them in a way that they can shine. I truly believe leadership is showing up and helping other people shine to the best version of them. That's true leadership. We don't have to bring people on full-time anymore. We can hire based on a smaller scale, couple hours, one event at a time. There are tons of people that are wanting some work. Not everybody wants a full-time gig, but we've got to be putting out that we're looking to hire. So this comes back to our needing to know our numbers. One of the things I teach my ladies is I call it the 30-30-30-10. When you look at $100 coming in your account, we want 30% to go directly into your tax account. Now, I live in Canada. My tax rate is considerably higher, so I have to put a little bit more. But rule of thumb is just put 30% away. And we want to build a buffer so that when it's time to pay our taxes, we have more than enough sitting in that account, because they're going to come calling. It is a sure thing that they're going to come calling, looking for their tax money. The tax guy's coming. You cannot hide from them. So we want 30% to go into that account. So all of a sudden we've got $70 out of our 100. The other 30 goes towards business expenses. There are expenses that are associated with running our business. Simple things like the software you're using to host this podcast, staffing, having people support you. You've got a lovely woman, Frances, who deals with your guests before they even connect with you. Those are all costs, but if they took 100% of your revenue, we'd have a bit of a problem. So if you can be looking at whatever's coming in and look at it through the percent lens, then you'll know how much you have available for the operation side of your business. The next 30% is your salary. And there's a lot of people that are working that are not paying themselves. The reality is this is your livelihood. And whether you need the money or not, we want that exchange of being compensated for the skill and the value that you're bringing. You don't have to pay yourself 30% if you don't need to, but you've got to pay yourself something. So 30-30-30, and then the last 10% is the profit. Now, running a company at a 10% profit margin for some people is really tricky. However, what that does is allows you to start building up your buffers, because there's too many of us that are going dollar in, dollar out, dollar in, dollar out. And at the end of the month, there's nothing left over and they're starting from scratch again the next month. But this is our retirement. This is our livelihood. We have to have more than enough, or we're going to rely on that little plastic card, and we're going to let Visa or MasterCard take care of our expenses. And we can't do that because that's going to put you down that hole. And like I said right at the top, it's going to take you 3 times as long to dig out of the hole as it is to dig in. So 30% to tax, 30% to operating, 30% to you, 10% left over, and just try and build up those buffers. And that makes it a little bit safer to hire. So it's possible that you can't hire exactly what you need. You know, maybe you need somebody 20 hours a month, but it's out of your 30%. That doesn't mean you can't hire somebody 5 hours a month, and then you replace those 5 hours with revenue generating activities so that you can start making more money. We've just got to work with what we can do.
It's a fascinating way of breaking it down. I personally had done something similar, but they were much larger buckets than not so individually itemized. But it's a great way, I think, to look at it, because sometimes when you start setting things aside like that, it helps open up your mind of like, okay, that's what this is for. I can use that for that. You know what I mean? It sounds like kind of a dumb thing, but when you start getting into like, okay, I'm setting aside that for that. So that 30% is for operations. And then, okay, great. I haven't been spending any money on an equipment or anything like that. I can start to look at dipping into that, hiring someone like you say, just for an hour a week, start 2 hours a week to start dipping into that. One of the, we had an episode, I'd have to look up the episode number. Maybe we can throw it in the chat on extreme gifting. And so rather than just doing, the $10 Starbucks card or something like that, the gentleman was saying, take 5% of the profit for that event. And that's your gift. And that is usually so much more than what people usually spend on a thank you gift. It starts being in the hundreds of dollars and sometimes even thousands of dollars compared to a $10 gift card. That it would blow his clients' minds, but it's only 5%. It's like, it's really not that big of a thing. And so by setting that 5%, I've been kind of trying to play with this a little bit, saying, wow, I can really go all out on something nice for one of my clients. But in the big picture, it's not that much. So I love kind of breaking it down the way that you've got that. We've got lots of questions coming in. Lindsey is on it. She says it's episode 164 that we talked about extreme gifting. She also pointed out that you absolutely lit up when you started talking about that 2-day thing. So you can tell that it was something that you were passionate about. It was something that you loved. And so that is a key indicator. Yeah, isn't it though? When you get the goosebumps, when you know that that's right, that's a fantastic indicator. Several months after I went out on my own, my wife told me that I was happier. And I wasn't unhappy in my old job, right? So it's just those amazing moments when you kind of get to know where you're at. Some of the other comments, the prayers when it comes to people managing, trusting and delegating, when you're having to do that, you got to let go to a certain extent and extend that trust.
Trust is the hardest thing because it requires us to be vulnerable. And what we hate to do is be vulnerable as a business owner because we wear it as a sign of weakness. It's like, oh, I can't ask for help, or I can't admit that this isn't going wrong. Listen, I was supposed to hire last week. I made a mess of it. I made a huge mistake. I totally pissed off the woman I was trying to hire. I totally own it. I'm being vulnerable, but I'm still okay. I'm still the same woman. I just had a learning moment and it's okay. But asking for help and trusting that other people can do what we've hired them for, that's true leadership. And allowing our team to sometimes make a mistake and trusting that we'll be okay on the back end of the mistake is another piece of the puzzle.
Well, as always, the hour starts to fly by, and so we have to start winding down. We've got time for a few more, and so if you're in the chat, please sure and drop in any questions you might have for Sheila, and we'll get them straight to her. I know that you have some unique ways of promoting your own business, so if you could share a little bit on some of the ways that we can promote our business. We talked about, obviously, social media and things like that.
Sure.
And then what the heck is a lead magnet in your world?
Yeah. For sure. So let's start with lead magnet, and then I'll share some ways that I promote. A lead magnet is something that we're putting out in the world that is designed to attract the right people to us. So probably something in the lead magnet is going to solve a problem that our people tend to have. So in the event space, I've seen some great ones. You know, I'm coming back to Natalie with the event Sustainable Event Planners, 10 ways to make your events more sustainable and earth friendly. Quick PDF, 10 points. I'm going to learn something, 2 minutes, quick to consume, big impact. People are going to give me their email in order for me to give them that piece of content. That is what a lead magnet is. My job then is to take them and pull them closer into what I call my web of magic. So you put out the lead magnet, it's going out to strangers and we're pulling them in so that they become leads. We want them to make that micro conversion. We want them to like our Facebook page. We want to connect with them on LinkedIn. We want to maybe book a call with them. Maybe we want to go for coffee. Maybe we want to have them follow us on Instagram or share a story somewhere. It doesn't matter. Leave a comment on our blog. You know, connect with our podcast, whatever that is. So our job is to pull them closer into your web of magic so that you can work in your zone of magic. So they then become a lead. Then we want the leads to become prospects. And that's where we talked about having that conversation be personal, getting them on the phone, having a virtual coffee, doing something like this where you get to interview or talk to people. That is getting prospecting so that the conversation and the relationship becomes personal. And that is when you get to make your offer of how you can help them. So call it the web of magic. You just draw them in, but your lead magnet is that first tool. It's like that magnet that you're putting out to attract people in.
And what about your business? What else? Is there anything specific that you're doing to draw them in?
I've got a couple. So I also have a podcast. It's called The Road to Seven with Sheila Cummins. It is stories about women that have built or are very close to having 7-figure businesses, because there's so much good in storytelling. And I also intersperse some of my training and teachings into it. So I balance it out. So I've got a podcast and I invite people to subscribe it, leave a comment, and then that podcast is going to invite them into my Facebook group. So I have a Facebook group called Women of Action Facebook group, and that's going to pull people closer so that I can then start engaging on a personal level and get to know who that woman is and what she needs. And I put special content in there that's not available in other places. There's a quiz that I have that people could take to help identify what their next best power move is based on where they are in the business growth journey. I also do a ton of speaking. I love getting on stage and supporting an audience with whatever challenge it is that they're having in terms of their business. And I always am going to invite them to connect at some point through that presentation. If anybody has a podcast and they're looking for someone to speak, I say yes, because I love to teach. So I find things that light me up and make me be me and allow me to shine. And I say yes to those. I have a productivity planner. It's called Productive. I have it sitting here in front of me on my desk.
For the audio listener, she literally has a planner.
Literally have it sitting on my desk. It is designed for entrepreneurs to help them shift from being busy to being productive. Nice. And that's a low-cost way to start engaging with me. And that, of course, is going to pull somebody into my web so that I can get to know them a little bit better. So there's quite a few ways that I market pretty consistently online.
And it's what's fun to me is that you can be marketing and helping people and being a contributing part of the industry all at the same time. That it's not just it's not just a marketing gig. I'm just doing it for the market. Like people can sniff that out a mile away. But if you're genuinely there to help people and to solve problems and to make their lives better, people see that and they feel that. You know, Will and I have been doing all kinds of speaking gigs over the course of the last couple of months. And it's so much fun doing those and having those conversations. And you had talked about, the conversations that can have on your podcast. And obviously we have them here as well. But one of the most fun things for me is when you get a room full of experienced and inexperienced planners, like a nice mix, all just talking to each other about, well, you know what happened to me on my event once is I went there and the hotel was gone.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean the hotel was gone? And then, and then rumble, and how you deal with those problems is a phenomenal time. So just like when we start the show, we have kind of our softball questions. Now we get to kind of end the show with our softball questions. Once again, this is your last chance. Anyone in the chat, if they want to throw their questions, I think you're just dropping so many knowledge bombs that they're just
Thank you.
So it's fantastic. Lots of tips today. If you had to pick only one, what was your one tip that you would send towards event planners?
Absolutely. So you've got a goal. I would hope that an event planner had a goal. You also get to choose how you spend your time. So if you have time available to work, make sure that you're doing work that's going to get you closer to your goal. Don't sit there and waste your time. If you're scrolling through Facebook endlessly, or you're just, scrolling through Instagram, turn off your computer, step away, go move your body or do something, and then get clear on what it is that you need to do. And, you laid down a really nice thought that I think is important to build on. If you do nothing through your day, stop for 2 seconds and ask yourself, what can I do today to impact somebody else's life? What can I do today to help somebody in my community? And come at it from that spirit and do that one thing, and then log off, turn off your computer, you're done. So in the time that you have available, make sure that you are prioritizing revenue generating activity. If you're in the rut and you hate it, we need to get you some help with it. And go from that place of what can I do today to make our world a better place?
Nice. Very nice. Makes my second question a little more lame. So any cool resources you'd like to share, whether it's websites, books, blogs, gadgets, doesn't have to be event related, anything that's new and exciting in your world today?
Yeah, I think it's really important that I'm actually going to turn that around a little bit. And I think the listener needs to know what they need. And if we can stop and say, what is it that I need today? There is a solution out there for you. So if it's knowledge in terms of a specific thing, there's sales podcasts, there's marketing podcasts, there's blogs, there's experts in the industry. Go and follow somebody who does what it is that you need. Success leaves clues. We want to go and connect with that person, absorb what it is that we need so we can take that next step. I'm a huge podcast listener. I kind of bump around from podcasts, so I don't know if there's just one that I listen to, but find somebody who has or a solution to what it is that you need and just start learning. Feed your brain every day.
It's a fantastic, anybody that listens to this show knows I'm a huge fan of podcasts because it's just a way to put knowledge almost straight into your brain, right?
Yeah.
Whether when you're mowing the lawn or anything like that, anything you do in those activities that you normally just kind of zone out, it's a perfect opportunity to almost on a subliminal level learn things. So fantastic.
Agreed.
Sheila, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It's amazing
I'm really honored.
speaking with you. I think there's
Thank
probably a part 2 in this somewhere where we can start to take things to the next step. Where can people find out more about you and what you're up to these days?
Yeah, well, there's only one Sheila Cummins, and it's spelled SHELAGHCUMMINS, and I'm the only one. So you can find me on Facebook, you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, my website, SheilaCummins.com. And it would be an absolute honor to connect with any of your listeners. And I'd love to invite people to join the Women of Action Facebook group. I'd love to connect with you in there and get to know you a little bit better.
We'll absolutely make sure that we get those links both to your website and to the Facebook group dropped into the resources so that people can just click away and join there. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you all for listening and watching wherever you're at. We want to remind you that Event Icons is recorded live each Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can watch at event-icons.com. We're starting to be playing around with a few ideas of where that's going to be broadcast to. Tease of that last week. We're continuing to work on that. So stay tuned. And the best place to stay tuned is event-icons.com. We'll let you know as we start to look at other services where you can watch live and other ways that you can connect with us. The show is available the following Tuesday on all of your favorite podcast apps. So Google Play, the actual Google Podcast app, the Apple Podcast app, Pocket Casts, Spotify. If there's a platform that you listen to podcasts on and we're not there, please do let us know because we want to be wherever you're listening. But as a reminder, right now, the best place to watch is live at event-icons.com. There you can see all the show notes, the links to all of the resources we just talked about, and join in the chat right there on the page. We want to know what you think. Hashtag event icons. It's directly in the name, folks, so there's no excuse to forget what the hashtag. You should contact us on hashtag event icons or reach out via any of the socials, and we're right there. So let us know. What do you think? What are your favorite business tips? What got you through those first 5 years, and what did you do to get over maybe the fear of hiring someone new? What got you over the edge? Please do let us know, and we'll see you next time on Event Icons.
It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of Hashtag Event Icons, presented by Endless Events, the show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. Just go to www.event-icons.com to ask questions. Our iconic guests will answer them live during the entire show. Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better the conversation. So please help share hashtag Event Icons on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com. Now, without any further delay, this is hashtag Event Icons.